Hi, we're Richard and Jackie from Early Retirement Wanderlust.
And as you can see, we're home. We have just got back from the most amazing 6-week campervan road trip down to the Istrian Peninsula in Croatia. And in this video, we want to share with you exactly how much it cost us for that 6-week road trip with a breakdown of all the different totals.
If you've been following our channel for a while, you will know that we've been out in Europe and we have been on a monster road trip. We have been away for 43 nights in our VW campervan. We have covered a total of 3,489 miles and we have visited 7 countries. And I can honestly say I have had absolutely no responsibility at any point during that trip for anything finance related.
But I've had a really cool little black book that I've kept in the glove box, and I have recorded every single penny that we've spent so we could have a proper breakdown of how much the road trip cost us. Now, I've broken it down into 7 different areas of travel and shopping, and we thought we would share that with you today.
One of the things we have done is, for simplicity's sake, we've converted everything back to pounds using today's current exchange rate, which is €1.14 to the pound.
So the first cost that we spent, months before we even set foot on French soil, was the ferries, which cost us £185, and we went with DFDS.
One of the ways that we managed to keep those costs down is that we joined the Camping and Motorhome Club, which does give you a discount on ferry tickets, and we knew that we'd got 3 trips to Europe this year so far, so we would probably make the membership cost up in terms of the discounts that we got.
The next cost, and it was probably one of the biggest costs and totally unavoidable, was petrol, and we spent a total of £588.82 on petrol. Bearing in mind we did cover 3,489 miles, I was actually surprised that it wasn't more.
Yeah, the emotional turmoil of going out and coming back when you seemed like you were constantly filling the van up was broken up a little bit, because once you actually get out there and get out to your sort of turnaround point, you don't spend that much on fuel, but it hurts on the way down and on the way back, because you do feel you're spending constantly on fuel.
A cost that actually crept up on us a little bit was the price of tolls. We did a video where we got all the way down to Italy without using any of the French tolls, but it did still creep up to £187.54. Most of those were buying the vignettes. We had to get the Austrian vignette, which was €11.50. The Swiss vignette was €40, and the Slovenian one was €36. Most of the other tolls were actually spent in Italy, getting right across from Lago Water to Slovenia. By far the biggest cost of this trip was accommodations and campsite fees. We spent £911.28, and most of that was probably in Slovenia, Croatia and Austria, and we're going to break down and analyse a little bit why that was.
We started the trip off really well in France, and France is really accommodating and, from our perspective, relatively cheap for van travel, and there were loads of options for park for the nights, and they were free park for the nights, and we never found it really difficult to find places in France to keep on budget.
Next we went to the Italian lakes and we spent 5 nights there. We could have actually found cheaper airs or park for the nights, but we spoilt ourselves a little bit. We wanted to be on lakeside. We'd driven a lot of miles and we saw that part of the holiday as just a little bit of a rest and recuperation and a bit of a beach holiday.
Italy was very similar to France. There seemed to be a really nice blend of park for the nights that were tolerated, airs and campsites with the variety of sort of budgets. So yeah, we think that Italy would be a good place to target to keep things on budget as well.
Yeah, and a bargain night or 2 nights that we had in Italy was when we went to Venice, and actually it was only €18 per night at an air within 10 minutes of being in Venice city centre. So there was lessons to be learned. Perhaps spend a bit more time in Italy, a bit less time in the other countries that were more expensive, but we had a fantastic week in Croatia and we used our Axi discount card for all of the campsites. Croatia doesn't allow or tolerate wild camping in any way, And they do have airs, but the airs and the campsites were very similarly priced when we used the Axi card. It was about 21, 23 euros per night. The campsites were fantastic. They were right on the beach. They had great facilities, and we did see them as really good value. But there's a big but there.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Well, I know that we couldn't afford to go back in the summer because the prices that they were talking in the peak summer seasons, where we were in the Istrian Peninsula, you would struggle to find a campsite for less than 60 euros a night, and that would have just priced us out in the height of summer. So, yeah, we were lucky at the time of year that we went.
And we had an amazing time. We moved on to Slovenia. Slovenia is another place that doesn't tolerate wild camping, and we found their campsites really expensive. And the Axi system in Slovenia and Croatia particularly seemed to stop working early to mid-June, whereas most of the other continental countries keep going right through to the 7th of August. Bit of a mixed bag in Slovenia. We stopped at a really nice little 20-pitch campsite in southern Slovenia. It was 27 euros a night with the Axi card, and it was fantastic. Then we moved up to Lake Bled.
Yeah, and that felt like we were in an Instagram honeypot, a tourist honeypot, whatever you want to call it. And it was really expensive. They stopped their Axi discount on the 1st of June, which means it's a long, expensive summer. And we ended up paying, I think it was just over 45 euros a night with various added taxes and things like that. It felt really expensive for, I'll be really honest, what felt like a really average campsite. It certainly was nowhere near the best campsites we stayed at. It was quite cramped. The facilities were really basic. If only I had started Rate My Shower, because I would have loved to have done a Rate My Shower on the Lake Bled campsite, because it unfortunately wouldn't have scored more than half marks for me.
We did find another Axi campsite at Camping Spic, and the Kranjska Gora area is just amazing. It was 27 euros a night, which was really good value, but we were a little bit disappointed that they started adding all sorts of extras onto the cost of the Axi card. So we had €2.80 per person per night taxes, which is fine. Most countries do have some sort of tourist tax, and then there was a booking fee of €2, and if we hadn't had the discount with the Axi card, I think it would have been about 60-70 euros a night. Last place we stayed in Kranjska Gora was fab though.
It was an absolute bargain, and it was an authorised air in the centre of the town. It was a brilliant location. It was right at the bottom of the ski lifts. We obviously are a little bit reluctant to use airs because we don't have onboard facilities, but just up the road there was the most perfect and pristine public toilets that were open all night. So we actually stayed there for a couple of nights, and I think if we were going back, we would target the air at Kranjska Gora as a place to go and stay relatively cheaply in an absolutely beautiful part of the world.
And then Austria. We stayed in the Tyrol region, which again doesn't particularly tolerate wild camping, so we were stuck being on campsites again. The standard of most of the Austrian campsites is absolutely top notch. They are superb, but they do come at a price. Luckily for us, we were still there at Axi discount time, so we got most sites for no more than 27 euros. Another thing we found in Austria though, lots and lots of add-on fees. I think we stayed at Camping Meyerhofen. It was 25 euros a night, so it should have been 50 euros, but we actually ended up paying 66 by the time they'd added on all of the tourist taxes and different, I think they called them environmental fees and booking fees. Still not massively expensive at £33 per night, but the costs were creeping up.
But I would obviously counter that, and you know, the Austrian campsites were the inspiration for Rate My Shower, and I can see them sitting at the top of the leaderboard for many years to come because the quality of the facilities within those campsites was really good value.
So actually in general, £911.28 for 43 nights being on the continent, I think is pretty reasonable. It's not a huge cost. Ideally, we like to try and wild camp 2 nights and on a campsite 1 night just to use the facilities and top up on electricity and have a shower. So But that was only because of the Axi discount card that kept it so low for us.
One thing to note when you are thinking about the style of campsite or air that you're choosing is that in the low season when we went, there wasn't really that much difference in terms of the prices between an air and a campsite. So we obviously took the advantage of the Axi discount and went to the campsites. Whereas we think in the height of summer, and we know in the height of summer, that gap would be much more significant. So you could actually save more money by going to the airs.
So the next cost we're going to break down is food, and our supermarket shops particularly. We spent, and I was actually surprised by this, I thought it would be quite a lot higher, £533.27. Now we did mainly seek out Aldi's and Lidl's, which is what we use in the UK anyway, and the European Aldi and Lidl's are just fantastic.
They have a really good choice, and if you're in Austria, dweeby fact, Aldi's are known as Hoffers there. Got no idea why, because Aldi's are known as Aldi's all across the world from what we know. But yeah, Hoffers, seek them out.
As in the UK, they are fantastic for fresh meat and veg. And in Europe, Aldi has bakeries, and both Aldi and Lidl bakeries are just brilliant. So that kept the cost of the supermarket shops down. We did note though, Croatia and Slovenia, they still had Lidl's, but they weren't quite the same.
No, and in general, the supermarkets I felt weren't quite the same. Now, we're not picky eaters at all. We'll pretty much eat anything. There wasn't a massive amount of choice in terms of meats, processed or fresh meats. There was just very little choice in terms of cheese, and the fruit and veg racks were pretty lacking, weren't they?
Yeah, we did struggle a little bit. We like to take our own sort of packed lunches wherever we go to keep costs down, and we struggled getting bread and meats and cheeses to do that. But we survived and we had a great time, so we'll move on. So our next cost is cafes and restaurants, and this is one area that we actually make the most savings in. For us to be able to go and travel for 6 weeks, we tend not to eat out. It's just one way of saving money. We can stay out for longer if we eat out less. So we actually only spent about £156 in cafes and restaurants, and we only actually ate out twice.
We do have a sneaky way of still getting the experience. Well, it's not really sneaky, but it's just economic in the fact that we don't tend to go out for meals, but we do put a great emphasis on going out for coffee, ice cream and the occasional drink. So rather than going out for a meal and a drink, we would eat at the van and then go out and enjoy a drink, people watch, and have that whole experience, but without the full cost.
And I know for some people, being on holiday, it's a big part of it that you would want to go out for lots of meals and things. But for us, because we travel so frequently, we couldn't keep that up. We'd rather have the time and experiences than sitting in a bar or a restaurant.
Yeah, and it's a compromise worth making.
And then the last cost I have just broken down into extras. It includes things like we spent €90 going to the Plitvice Lakes. We spent €60 on the cable car at Meyerhofen so that we could do some high-level hiking, and laundry whenever we had to do any washing. And actually our extras came to about £168. Okay, so I'll just go through a final summary of all the costs. Our first cost was £185 for the ferries. £588.82 for petrol. Tolls came to £187.54. Our campsite fees and accommodations were £911.28. Total food costs from supermarket shops was £533.27. Going to cafes and ice creams and a couple of meals out, we spent £156.49. And a few extras, like the Plitvice National Park, came to £168.18. That gave us a grand total for 6 weeks and 2 days in Europe, including every single penny that we spent, of £2,730.58, which actually I think is really good value when we think of the experiences that we've had.
So it's not our usual video, but we hope you found it of use. We have had a number of people request us do a bit of a financial breakdown of this trip.
Yeah, and it's actually been really good for us to sit and think where the costs were and if we could have saved money anywhere. Actually, I think we got it pretty spot on. We had the most amazing time. So that's it for this week.
See you later.
Bye.